Adventurers! Welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. This is your host, Tom. I'm here with my good buddy, the Lotus of the Doom. Lotus,
hello.
Lotus, I have a question for you. In fact,
All right.
I'm going to paint a picture, and I want you to tell me who I'm describing. All right, so in this scenario, it's a dark, creepy night. You're all alone in the house. It's storming outside. You're trying to fall asleep, but you're afraid to fall asleep because you know deep in your dreams, in your nightmares, there lurks a creature waiting to prey on you. Who am I describing?
That's an uncomfortable amount of people that could actually cover in the Elder Scrolls, but because I cheated and looked at the notes, it's totally
Freddy Krueger.
Vaermina. Yeah, no, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger.
No. Oh wait, no, it's Vaermina. It's Vaermina.
Oh yeah,
it's the final Daedric prince.
It's the final Daedric prince. Do-do-do-do.
And it makes a great song without a single potential copyright infringement.
I should have prepared a cover for today's episode.
To be fair, that's pitch perfect. We're almost certainly going to get you demonetized immediately.
Oh God. Sorry, Twitch.
No, it's too late now.
I'm sorry, Twitch.
Yeah.
But welcome back, everybody. We're talking about Vaermina, not Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
I don't think Vaermina has a claw glove. I don't think that's a thing.
I also don't feel like she's sponsored by Journey, as we just implied.
I'm just gonna keep. Okay, maybe I won't
feel like it's much more sinister than we're leading on.
What if it was like minor? What if it was like the final Daedric prince?
Just really fizzling out on There, now we won't get copyright infringement.
There you go. I perfectly transposed that to a minor key.
Absolutely. And the 7 people left listening are very excited to hear what we have to say about
All right.
Vaermina.
Well, here, let's get into the details because, man, we've gone through all the Daedric princes. We're finally on the last one. Yep. And then what else are we even going to talk about? Oh, wait. There's tons of other things to talk about in the Elder Scrolls. Don't worry.
It's almost like there's a little bit more lore that we can deal with.
A little bit more. This has been fun, though. This has been a lot of fun going back through these. As much as it keeps us on one topic for a while, and then we kind of go, we can't talk about these other things yet. It's fun to get through it, but let's get through it. The first half of this episode, we're going to get into the details. We're actually going to talk about the items and things in the first half. And in the second half, we have kind of an extended story time. One of the best stories in the lore. So stay tuned for that. But let's kick this off. Vaermina, which was misspelled as Vaermina in only one book ever. It was the Book of the Daedra in Skyrim. It was just a typo. Somebody typed it wrong, probably. Maybe they're gonna
with all the patches that was never addressed.
right. But maybe there's a lore reason for it.
Well, I was gonna say these things were all written in universe. Maybe whoever was transcribing that one was just, I don't know. They didn't have a good editor.
Maybe.
Could have just been like a whoops, and
they were dyslexic.
Yeah,
could have been
potentially.
Yeah. So Vaermina is the Daedric prince of dreams and nightmares, the gifter, the mistress of nightmares and dark portents, the lady of nightmares, the weaver of dreams, the queen of nightmares, weaver of the panoply. It's panoply. Panoply. Nope.
I've heard that word, and now I'm like really struggling to
panoply.
I don't think that's
Panoply.
I think it's Panoply.
That's the game where you move around the board and buy hotels.
Monopoly.
Oh, crap.
On the flip side, though, she'd probably be pretty good at it because she'd just give people horrible, horrible nightmares of debt, and then they wouldn't want to buy property, and then she'd win.
Don't stay in her hotels. She will haunt your dreams.
Correct.
The Dream Weaver and the Dark Lady. Her sphere, clearly, is dreams and nightmares, and from whose realm evil omens issue forth. Notice, we've talked about so many different Daedric princes. Some of them are on the edge of like, they're kind of creepy. Some of them super evil people. Some of them just kind of doing their own thing. Who knows if they care about humans or mortals or whatever. Vaermina Absolutely. I mean, I feel like this is absolute evil.
Doubles down on the horror aspect. It's just like, my goal in life is for you to go to sleep and me to literally ruin your night's sleep with nightmares.
Right. Another way to understand her is that she revels in torture, and her method of torture is through psychological manipulation in dreams.
Yeah. So unlike some of the Molag Bal situations that we've run into, or with Mehrunes Dagon, where it's in the games, it's very overtly like, torture is fun for us. Like, this is great. We're going to mess with the mortals. She is much more cerebral and like, I'm going to, really, really mess with your mental well-being, which is horrifying in a different way than just the overt, like, hammer smash hand. It's more like hammer smash mind for her. So,
right. Yeah. The more she can kind of prey on your mental state.
Right.
And maybe even cause you to do terrible things because of that.
Yeah, manipulate you into doing things out of fear, which is a very strong way of controlling people in real life. So it kind of makes sense that, an all-powerful being would then try to manipulate servants by using that.
Yeah. Hopes and fears are the, I would say in my so many years of life, that I have learned that the things that motivate most of us and the things that even define our realities are most likely the things that we hope for the most and the things that we fear the most. And reality tends to be somewhere in the middle. She pushes that spectrum all the way to the fear the most and uses dreams in order to communicate that.
Yep.
Which is super disturbing because you can't fight a dream, especially when it's being manipulated from outside your own mind. Like there's the thing that some people can do where they have these dreams where they realize that they're in control. They can actually control their own dreams because their dream is created by their own brain, their own mind.
Right. And they've become aware enough of what they're doing. I've always wanted, I've tried screwing around with that and I've had lackluster success at it, but it always seemed like a neat concept to be able to do.
Yeah. Lucid dreaming is what it's called. And some people can do this or can kind of tap into this on occasion. Even if you had that ability, you couldn't fight back against Vaermina because her influence is coming from outside your own brain.
Right.
She's inserting things. That's just nuts. I also really like here the section where, and we're pulling a lot of our notes from the UESP, although we've got some other sources as well. There's a section in the UESP that briefly touches on the Khajiit concept of her in relationship to Vaermina. And it says here, Vaermina, also called the Lost Daughter, is a spirit found in Khajiit traditions predating the Riddlethar Epiphany, which is something we'll have to cover on another episode. Long time ago.
We'll have to deal with the Riddlethar at some point, like kind of in depth.
Yeah. So think long time ago in the history of the Khajiit as a people. She is said to be a child of Fatime. So Padme, right? Born out of her mother's fear of losing her children. Everything in the Khajiit pantheon is done through this like relational concepts of like parents and children and that kind of thing. Azura killed Vaermina, and her spelling in this was with 2 eyes, by the way, in the underworld. And now she can only haunt the dreams of the Khajiit. It is believed that she tests them by playing to their fear, for she cannot directly harm the lunar lattice, which is another concept that keeps them safe. So this concept is really interesting because it shows that she's pitted against Azura, which is common across Tamriel. It's generally understood. We also know that she's against Ebenarm, which is one of the ones that always comes up. Boethia, Periite, and Hermaeus Mora. None of these seem to get along with her, but Sanguine seems like a buddy.
Well, I mean,
as much as they ever buddy up, but
I just mean it makes sense. He's probably too drunk to ever actually remember anything, so he's probably just super mellow from being high and drunk, and then like as a side effect, it's like, he's not going to get stressed out by it. So all of his, I could easily see them having like overlap where it's like that's just a weird situation, just like in a pseudo joking, but also sort of, since so many followers of Sanguine are pretty much just perpetually enjoying themselves to the nth degree. The concept of like, oh, well, we need to control my fear. Well, they're going to be the most mellow people in Tamriel.
Right. Well, here, think of it this way. Think about what these, the Daedric princes represent. Not necessarily who they are and what they do, but what they represent. We have Vaermina representing dreams and nightmares, and Sanguine representing things like taking things too far, revelry, but including things like alcohol. What happens when you drink too much alcohol? You pass out. So these two things, even just in concept, are kind of neighbors with each other. We've talked about that with some of the other Daedric princes and their concepts as well. So it makes sense.
Bleeds over to help, like, oh, this actually, like, by you being a follower of me, you kind of bumble into this other realm or this other sphere of influence as well.
Yeah. So there's kind of that connection there where like one kind of leads into the other. Also, when you go too far down the things that Sanguine tempts you towards, then you end up creating these terrible situations. Your fears might become true, right? So you've got this concept of like, she plays on your fears, but Sanguine and giving into your desires might actually lead to some of those things actually happening. So there's kind of that bit of a crossover thing going on. There's the other thing to note here about Vaermina is that there really isn't a ton of detail about her. And when we say her, typically Vaermina shows up in a female form.
Yeah, more often than not, you'll get the female version, voice actor slant to her incarnations in game.
Right.
I don't know if she has not ever been presented as a
we get her
and or
voice?
amorphous blob, has she?
No, I don't think we've ever seen a male or anything other than female form. I mean, we could always stand to be corrected because in some ancient game somewhere they put her in as something real briefly. But
yeah, Vaermina in Daggerfall is kind of ridiculous looking.
Yeah. So there is that. Vaermina is another one of the Daedric princes that comes from very early in the series. The Daggerfall representation, she looks like an old balding monk with a ponytail.
Yeah, little bit with a fine GIF swirl going around her.
Yeah. There's like this magic blue swirly thing, a black robe with a staff. In fact, if you didn't tell me that this was a picture of a female form, I wouldn't know.
So I guess maybe in Daggerfall this does not apply. So
potentially. Yeah. But the other forms we get are typically female. She's generally in some sort of dress, some sort of headdress with a staff. There is concept art for ESO where she looks much more snake-like. She has kind of either a snake-looking mask with kind of a beak on the front, or maybe that's the actual head with like armored shoulders. The torso has breasts, so it's more of a female shape. But then there's the staff and these serpents that kind of wind around the staff or she's holding in one of her arms. Mm-hmm. That one looks way sinister and really cool.
Yeah, it really does. It actually looks super badass.
Yeah, so I like that one a lot. But outside of that, we get a little bit of events in the second, third, and fourth era. Not a whole lot. I would love, and just thinking through this episode earlier, Lotus, we've talked about things that we would like to see in the next mainline Elder Scrolls or even a potential expansion for ESO.
Yep.
Having a Vaermina kind of focus, even in a DLC or something, with like messing with your dreams, going into a dream world, your nightmares becoming reality, seems like something that would be really cool to tap into.
Yes. Once we, I guess we could use this actually as like a transition into it. The only thing, because it's something I've also thought would be a very cool premise for like a focus to the series, is they have quests that touch on Vaermina, being involved with things. However, one of the things, as we haven't seen really in depth all of the Daedric realms yet, her Daedric realm, which is called Quagmire, seems nigh impossible to try to create in game, I feel. Or
needs to be done so using a lot of metaphor. A lot of symbolism, a lot of metaphor. I feel like you could get really creative with it, which is why I think it might play into something that would be really cool to see in a future game. We get a little bit of a glimpse of, I believe it's in Oblivion.
Sure. And it's just the thing about Quagmire that I always thought was interesting. Do they have the exact quote? Actually, they do. They have the description of Quagmire that I was thinking of from in game. So it's a realm of horrors where reality shifts upon itself in seemingly impossible ways. Every few minutes, lightning flashes and the realm morphs into a terrifying scene, each one more frightening than the last. Could you, out of lore and into like game style, could you imagine trying to produce in a game something that is shifting constantly like that?
Right.
And
it would have to be
constantly outdo itself.
It would have to be like a limited sequence.
It would, and that's why it's like, I think it would be really cool, but yes, it would need to be very limited as opposed to when you visit the Shivering Isles or when you visit Apocrypha or something like that, just because it sounds like that would be such a monumental undertaking to try to produce in game, where the others are a little more concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Quagmire seems just so nebulous. It's just like, it is literally horror incarnate, and it keeps getting worse.
Yeah. Well, I've got two thoughts on that. One, in your dreams, you know how sometimes things transition from one moment in a dream to another, and they don't even make any sense.
There's no logical.
I'm in my office, and I walk through the door, and now I'm outside with my car. It's like, that's not how that door works.
How did we get there was no interlude there. It's just, here is a microwave and you're sitting on a park bench. It's like, wait, what?
Right. Exactly. So that's cool, because that's exactly how dreams work. And so that's how Quagmire works, or the dream stride. Sometimes it's called the dream stride. And the other thought here is, if they were to put this in game, instead of having like the whole scene just change around you as you walk around, to create like a labyrinth and a series of rooms where every time you exit one room and enter the next, everything's different.
And so, it's just, some other horrible thing.
Right. So like, maybe you start off and you're in some imperial palace and you walk through the next door, and all of a sudden you're in what appears to be part of Morrowind. And then you walk through another door, and all of a sudden there's gut gardens next to you, like
right.
This idea that like the world itself shifts as you travel through it, not necessarily around you in the literal sense.
Yep.
Could be a way of doing that. And yet you can't see through a doorway until you actually get to it, click on it, and then traverse into the next cell.
Right.
That could be a way of doing it, but I'm sure, they're creative. They're creative developers. I know.
Oh, absolutely.
They've come up with ways to make this work.
That one definitely just seems harder to nail down exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the others, you can work within the confines of them. That one just seems really, really difficult to tackle, where it's just like, perpetually changing horror. It's like, oh God.
Yeah. And to even play on things that the character would have witnessed in the regular world, because they would have, like, that's how dreams work, is your dreams only can reference things that you've ever experienced or seen. And so it wouldn't be external to that. It would have to be things that make sense from the view of the character, until you get to a place where all of a sudden it doesn't, and then you're like in the presence of Vaermina or something like that.
Sure.
Oh my God, that would be so awesome.
Right.
So lots of cool stuff with the way that could work. But we've got two artifacts here. You want to talk about the artifacts?
We do. So the Skull of Corruption is I don't ever find it matters that much in game.
I don't think I've actually used this.
Yeah,
most of these I'm like, I came across this. I used it a little bit, or I like it a lot. This one I don't know that I ever did.
Really cool.
It's seen in the game Oblivion, right?
It is. It is in the game Oblivion. So the Skull of Corruption is Vaermina's signature artifact. It's kind of the one she's most known for, and it looks pretty cool. It is a literal skull. At
the end of a stick with horns.
At the end of a stick, exactly. Yeah. Like, it kind of looks like a demon type of deal.
Mm-hmm. Glowy red eyes. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. No. I was going to say, it's an incredible artifact that able to create or duplicate a clone of whoever it's cast upon, which is sure. Like,
no, it's cool. Like, we had the item before where you create the imp, and then the imp goes and does whatever it wants, right?
Right.
In this one,
a little more direct.
Yeah. In this one, you look at your enemy. You clone your enemy, and then the clone starts attacking your enemy.
I was going to say, and then the clone attacks the original creation assuming the only thing is it. What if you didn't want to? I guess maybe why would you be cloning them? But like, what if you didn't? Like, it mentions that it is a thing. Like, what if you don't want to attack? Like, what if you just wanted 2 Lydias for some reason? I don't know.
But like, one is not an evil Lydia that decides to attack the original.
Shadow Lydia or something. Like,
yeah, I don't think it works like that. I think. Well, the thing, Vaermina's just evil. She just wants to do bad stuff. You know, why just clone people?
I guess why give you the option? Just it's Lydia fight. Like,
right. Like, here you go.
But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. And then there's another note that the legends say that the staff has a mind of its own and can feed on the memories of those around it.
Awesome.
Which maybe that's kind of like an answer to like, yeah, you don't get a choice in the matter. If you're going to use this and the staff wants the clone to take out the original, you don't get a say, even though you were the one who cast this ability, so to speak.
Right. Right. I mean, it seems very beneficial. In a, like, I'm going up against an enemy that I need to take down. I'm just going to send it against itself.
Right. But yeah, it's just, I feel that it looks cooler than it actually ever, like, functionally plays out. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't ever remember, like, it doing much of anything in Oblivion, but that was also a very long time ago. I've been wanting to kind of replay Oblivion at some point, so... But I'd
wonder if we had like a remaster Bethesda.
Yeah, maybe
remaster. Maybe
I love Skyrim and all, but maybe like a couple of the other games. You do have a lot of games you've made. You don't just have Skyrim.
Right? Yeah, I know development's not easy. Like it takes resources and money. But Rob says I'm working on it because he's doing Sky Oblivion.
Yeah. Damn it, Rob, go fast.
Give me a minute. We've given you like a decade. Come on already. Yeah. Sign up and help the Sky Oblivion project, everybody.
Exactly.
So we've got that one. I don't know about the details on it. I also don't know if there's like in-game effects where like the clone has half the health of the original or only does 50% of the damage. I don't know how any of that stuff works. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like that.
Right. But it's definitely not super prominent in the games like some of the other ones are in so many of them. And then the other is the Orb of Vaermina, which is just like, okay, it's obviously named after Vaermina. And it was an orb apparently used for scrying at some point in the Third Era 433. Who was in the possession of a wizard named Arkved, I believe. Mm-hmm. Is that how you pronounce Arkved?
Arkved. Yeah.
Arkved. Okay, so it's Arcaneer.
Arcaneer. This is Arcaneer's wizard orb.
Wizard form. Yes. Yep. By whom it was apparently snatched from the dreams of Vaermina's followers, which is
badass.
That's a pretty cool, like, okay, we're going into your dream and we're going to pull out a physical manifestation.
That's awesome.
Of an orb.
I love that.
Whoa. Okay. And it was recovered by Vaermina's champion, who, again, you get the Skull of Corruption as a gift. Like, that's...
Yeah. This was kind of the
you
MacGuffin.
Take the orb, okay, correct.
Right. It's to go get the Skull of Corruption.
Correct. So it kind of almost it's just like the. I mean, it is technically a different artifact, but you don't really use this one. You use this to get the actual artifact that you actually see.
Mm-hmm. It shows up in Legends. There's a really cool image in Legends of the it's
card
like
art for it is really cool.
Green orb sitting on a pedestal with like they're not flames. It almost looks like this wispy smoke that comes off the top of it.
Yes. It's makes me think of that. I have no context for what it's from, but if you've ever seen the meme that everybody uses is like the wizard just staring into the globe thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like this whole thing feels like he's just staring into the orb of Vaermina. It looks very similar to that.
He's just trying to get that Skull of Corruption. Maybe he's just trying to put the orb back in his dreams.
Oh, yeah. So it was stolen from his and he's just trying to wedge it back in there.
Yeah. He's just looking at it, trying to figure out how to get it back in his dreams. So that's going to do it for the first half of the show. We have a second half where we're going to read through a complete story. And I can do the reading if you want. I can read through the story. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. But first, we have to go thank our patrons. So don't go anywhere.
This is Hamish Morak. dragonborn, and you are educating yourself to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
All right, we're in the middle of the show. Time to thank our patrons. We have some new ones who signed up this last month. Dylan Y. and Annika, welcome to the Patreon. Thank you for joining us. I hope you are enjoying the ad-free episodes and all the other goodies. Also, I don't remember if we called out Harrison E. last time, but sometimes we get some on certain dates that are kind of in between when we may have done a recording or not. But welcome aboard as well. Thank you for all of the support. All 106 of you. That's amazing. Thank you to everybody. Also, we need to shout out our tier 5 Daedric princes, Dylan A., Kira C., and Noodle Al Dente. Thank you for supporting the show. We couldn't do it without you. Very, very much appreciated. Also, we have a rating, a new rating and review on Apple Podcasts. But before we do that, I need to mention the name of the site you can go to, patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast, if you want to sign up and check out ad-free episodes and all that kind of stuff. The review from this week comes from EcoGirl23 in the US, who writes, "Good podcast for newbies and experts alike. 5 stars. I've recently been on a big time video game and Lorecast kick at work, both out of personal interest and because my boyfriend is super into gaming. ESO is one of my favorite games I've tried with him." Oh, couples who ESO together stay together. That's what I hear. So I decided to give this show a listen and was overwhelmed in a good way by the vastness of the lore and gameplay information. Kudos to both hosts and keep up the good work. Eco Girl, that's awesome. Say hi to your boyfriend and keep on playing ESO. Enjoy it. I'm glad you're having a fun time. Also, Lotus, I've got stuff to talk about that I'm giving away.
Yes.
You know about the 25th anniversary for Fallout, and Fallout
I may or may not be wearing a NCR hat.
There you go.
Now.
There you go. Yeah. So 25 years. 25 years of Fallout. Isn't that awesome? And Bethesda was nice enough. They've reached out to a bunch of different content creators, given us things to give away to our communities. So I have 2 $100 gift cards for the Bethesda store, which would buy you some freaking awesome stuff. I also have some lithographs, and I'm giving this all away on my Twitch stream during my game and hangout streams, not during the podcast streams. So if you're here for the podcast right now, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I'm not doing a giveaway right now because it kind of gets in the way of doing the podcast thing. But come back on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the afternoons here in the US. Usually I start sometime around 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern, and come hang out with me. I'll be playing some games. I've been doing some Skyrim VR with a bunch of weird mods. I was telling Lotus about it during the intro of the show, and maybe I'll tack on that description of what I was doing to the end of the show. So stay till the very, very end, and you'll get a description of the wackiness that ensues in Skyrim VR when you can actually physically touch everything. It's crazy. But come hang out with me. I'm giving out these to random people throughout this entire month. You just have to show up during any of the streams, twitch.tv/robotsradio. And if you're there, I might just pick you randomly to get a prize. So I'd love to see you. And by the way, this is where everybody in the community comes and hangs out anyway. So get to know the rest of the community. Tell me about yourself. I'd love to learn more. So that's what we got going on. That's it for the middle of the show. Time to talk about a story about Vaermina. Here we go.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
So this is another one of Lotus's favorite stories.
Yes. Also, one thing I should mention, just because we were chatting about it in the side, live feed type of thing. It's kind of funny. We had mentioned kind of how the stuff is kind of cool, but a little, I guess, less prevalent than some of the other Daedric princes. We were just discussing the fact that you can actually get the Skull of Corruption in Skyrim as well on a really good quest. And I realized that I took the Skull of Corruption and threw it in his trunk upon getting it every playthrough. And I'm like, that's a great quest. I love it. It's found in Dawnstar if you're interested. But I'm like, oh, this is a great quest.
Thanks to Lornerd 090 who pointed that out in chat. Yes.
Yeah. Good point out that we didn't mention that quest specifically, and you totally do, because it's one of the Daedric think it might be Daedric Planeswalkers is the name of the achievement or whatever for collecting all of them. And I remember getting that one and using it like once. And I was like, meh. It's like, well, I guess Eternal Horror and such, whatever. It's like, where to next?
Just gonna store it in this chest. Thanks. Yeah. So, all right. So let's serve this one up. This story comes from which book, Lotus?
So this is volume 9 of yet another trek back to the Accords of the 16 Accords of Madness, which we've had many references to. If you haven't picked up on it already, I really, really like this series of books. It's a weird. Sheogorath is basically just running amok,
trolling.
Literally, Sheogorath is an internet troll, a memospore troll, because that's the closest they had to internet back then. So he is, this is another case of Sheogorath just screwing with another Daedric prince because he can.
Yep. All right. So this is how it goes. This is volume 9. And it's a little long. That's why we saved it for the second half of the show. And this is just what this half is about. So buckle in. Here goes. Darius Shano found himself running as fast as he could. He had no idea what he was running from or towards, but he didn't care. The desire saturated his mind. There was nothing in the world except flight. He looked around for landmarks, anything to place himself or to use as a target, but to no avail. The featureless grasslands through which he was sprinting extended as far as the eye could see. Just have to keep running, he thought to himself. I have to run as fast as I can. On and on he ran, with no end in sight or in mind. Standing over Darius Shano while he lay quietly on his bed were his mistress, Vaermina the Dreamweaver, and the mad god Sheogorath. This sounds like a dream that everybody's probably had at some point, right? Vaermina looked down with pride at this disciple of hers and was boastful of her little jewel. Such potential in this one. Through dreams of inspiration, I have nurtured literary talent into fruition, and now he stands in acclaim as an emerging bard and poet. He will gain much favor before I tire of him. Sheogorath, too, had gazed at the young Breton artist and saw that he was indeed famous among the other mortals. Mused Sheogorath. But how many of these are who hate this mortal? I'm not going to do a Sheogorath voice. Who hate this mortal?
Johnson here for this.
Whom you have built. It is the hatred of the mortals which confirms greatness, and not their love. Surely you can accomplish this as well. Vaermina's eyes narrowed. Yes, the mortals are indeed often foolish and petty, and it is true that many of their most bold have been despised. Do not worry, mad one, for I have the power to achieve many forms of greatness with this one, hatred among them. Perhaps, Dreamweaver, it would be amusing to show who has this power, inspire foolish, arrogant hatred of this mortal for 10 years, and then I will do the same. We shall see whose talents are most efficient, free of aid or interference from any of the Daedra. At this, she relaxed into confident pleasure. The mad god is indeed powerful, but this task is suited to my skills. The mortals are repulsed by madness, but rarely think it worthy of hate. I shall take pleasure in revealing this to you, and I bring the more subtle horrors out of this mortal's subconscious. And so, in the 19th year of his life, the dreams Darius Shano had been experiencing began to change. Fear had always been part of the night for him, but now there was something else. A darkness began to creep into his slumber, a darkness that sucked away all feeling and color, leaving only emptiness behind. When this happened, he opened his mouth to scream, but found that the darkness had taken his voice as well. All he had was the terror and the void. And each night they filled him with a new understanding of death. Yet when he woke, there was no fear, for he had faith that his lady had a purpose. Indeed, one night Vaermina herself emerged from the void. She leaned in close and whispered into his ear, "Watch carefully, my beloved." With that, she pulled the void away, and for hours each night, she would reveal to Darius the most horrible perversions of nature. Men being skinned and eaten alive by other men, unimaginable beasts of many limbs and mouths, entire populations being burned. Their screams filled his every evening. In time, these visions gnawed at his soul, and his work began to take on the character of his nightmares. The images revealed to him at night were reproduced on the page, and the terrible cruelty of hollow vice that his work contained both revolted and fascinated the public. They reveled in their disgust over every detail. There were those who openly enjoyed his shocking material and his I feel like this is so meta because we're enjoying this as it happens. And his popularity among some only fed the hatred of those who found him abhorrent. This continued for several years while the infamy of Darius grew steadily. Then, in his 29th year, without warning, the dreams and nightmares ceased. Darius felt a weight lifted, and he no longer endured the nightly tortures, but was confused. What have I done to displease my mistress? He wondered aloud. Why has she abandoned me? Vaermina never answered my prayers. No one ever answered, and the restless dreams faded away to leave Darius in long, deep sleeps. Interest in the works of Dario Shano waned. His prose became stale, and his ideas failed to provoke the shock and outrage that they once had. As the memory of his notoriety and his terrible dreams faded, the questions that raced in his mind eventually produced resentment against Vaermina, his former mistress. Resentment grew into hatred. From hatred came ridicule, and over time, ridicule became disbelief. Slowly, it became obvious. Vaermina had never spoken to him at all. His dreams were simply the product of a sick mind that had righted itself. He had been deceived by his own subconscious, and the anger and shame overwhelmed him. The man who once conversed with a deity drifted steadily into heresy. In time, all the bitterness, doubt, and sacrilege focused in Darius, a creative philosophy that was threaded through all of his subsequent work. He challenged the gods themselves as well as the infantile public and corrupt state of worshiping them. He mocked them with the perverse caricatures, sparing no one and giving no quarter. He challenged the gods in public to strike him down if they existed, and ridiculed them when no such comeuppance was delivered. To all of this, the people reacted with outrage far greater than they had shown his previous work. His early career had offended only sensibilities, but now he was striking directly at the heart of the people. His body of work grew in size and intensity. Temples, nobles, and commoners were all targets of his scorn. Finally, at age 39, Darius wrote a piece entitled The Noblest Fool, ridiculing the emperor god Tiber Septim for integrating into the pathetic Nine Divines cult. The local king of Dania, who had been humiliated by this upstart in the past, saw his chance. For his sacrilege against the empire, Darius Shano was executed with a ceremonial blade in front of a cheering crowd of hundreds. His last bitter words were gurgled through a mouthful of his own blood. 2 years after their wager was first placed, Vaermina... 20. That's a very different amount of time. Vaermina and Sheogorath met over Darius Shano's headless corpse. The Dreamweaver had been eager for this meeting. She had been waiting for years to confront the Daedric prince over his lack of action. I have been deceived by you, Sheogorath. I performed my half of the bargain, but during your 10 years, you never contacted the mortal once. He owes none of his greatness to you, or your talents, or your influences. Nonsense, croaked the mad god. I was with him all along. When your time ended and mine began, your whisper in his ears were replaced with silence. I severed his link from that which he found the most comfort and meaning, and withheld the very attention the creature so desperately craved. Without his mistress, this man's character could ripen under resentment and hatred. Now his bitterness is total, and overcome by a madness fueled by his rage. He feeds me in my realm as an eternal servant. Sheogorath turned and spoke to the empty space by his side. Indeed, Darius Shano was a glorious mortal, despised by his own people, his kings, and even the gods he mocked. For my success, I shall accept 70 followers of Vaermina into my service, and the dreamers will awaken as madmen. And thus did Sheogorath teach Vaermina that without madness, there are no dreams and no creation. Vaermina will never forget this lesson. So good. It's so good.
Such a good story.
Yeah. I love how, like, sometimes in these stories, Sheogorath does a thing and it's way less than you would expect. In this case, he does basically nothing.
Literally nothing. He just lets the situation play itself out because it's like, all right, well, if this dude wants attention, you know what'll drive him mad? Not giving him attention.
Right. So good. So, yeah, it would be really cool to see like we really need to see like a second version of this book where we get like the follow-up stories of how like Vaermina challenges him again, and then Sheogorath outwits her again. You know, like her scene challenges him again,
back for revenge.
Right, and then yet still Sheogorath still somehow
dunking on people.
Yeah, just the madness puts him just so far ahead of everybody else because they're being rational, and he's just like.
Well, it's funny because like this is kind of our closing to the Daedric Princes, but one of the things that we've brought up many times, several of the Accords of Madness, because I feel they all kind of portray different sides of Sheogorath. Like you had mentioned, sometimes he's actively doing stuff. This one, he actively was choosing not to do stuff because that was basically doing what he needed. But it's funny just because there are a select group of Daedric princes that Sheogorath kind of gets in these like troll fests with, and I'd be curious to see, does he ever interact with some of the other ones, like, or does some of the other ones either just straight up not care? Like, what are you going to do, Sanguine? Like, it's like, man, whoops, like, oh well, let's just go drink and have cheese. Like, that's like he would play right into it. Like, it's kind of interesting to see which Daedric princes kind of he uses their hubris against them.
Mm-hmm.
Where it makes me curious, would some of the other Daedric princes just not fit that realm? So, he kind of gets along with them or whatever.
Right. There's not enough hubris there to turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, how much can you mess with Hermaeus Mora with his weird stuff? I would almost think that would be an interesting one because he doesn't ever have an Accord of Madness with Hermaeus Mora. But it's like, I could almost see that being like, okay, can I outsmart Wacko here? Because, Tentacle Blob has all this information. Like, could we use that to his disadvantage? But he never does. And
yeah, Hermaeus is interesting because he's so hard to pin down. I think that's the thing, is that the others have a very clear MO.
Correct. And that's why, and it's why I think, some of them he doesn't really have a vendetta or a point to prove against some of the other ones where he's got something he can specifically lean into that he knows they'll falter on.
Right. Yeah, I could totally see that. But, so, it'd be cool. It'd be cool to get some of that stuff. So we do have voice actor here. The few times that we ever hear Vaermina's voice, she is voiced by Carla Delaney. And Carla Delaney is interesting. I pulled up some of the credits that go to Carla Delaney. Voices for lots of things that aren't video games. She's in Red Dead Redemption 2 as some other characters. She also voices in Skyrim Aventus Aretino. That might be a name that's familiar. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But outside of that is mostly TV shows. And strangely, so if you go back to 2004, she was in a short called Lift as just Lady Number 5. But then you have a series of
very memorable role, Lady Number 5.
Right. But then you have a series of characters that she plays in like Family Guy, The Cleveland Show. Yeah. And then another short, and then Skyrim. So Skyrim was really early on the things that she gets credited for, at least. And then a bunch of different TV series, some voiceover things, a bunch of cartoons. And this is also interesting too, is that in most of these cartoons, she's like an announcer or a GPS voice or the voice on the smartphone, or she's like a cute little deer named Clarice from the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer 4D movie in 2016.
Okay.
What?
That's quite a range.
And then she reprises the role for an Affleck commercial.
Perfect.
Because, those commercials where they took like the Christmas characters from the different shows and put them. Yep. And then some other characters and some other, funny cartoon things. But interesting. Other than that, not a whole lot of other video game stuff. So, but you might actually see her in a TV series or a podcast. She's a podcaster as well.
Oh,
awesome. So there you go. That's the real life Vaermina. I'm sure she wouldn't like that.
Probably wouldn't be the biggest selling point.
No, probably not.
On a resume, real life Vaermina.
Yeah. But this sums up the Daedric Princes. And
it does.
I don't have a definitive idea of where we're going next week. We do have another patron chat coming up in 2 weeks on the 27th. But for next week, we're going to have to come up with something. So if you guys are interested in specific topics, I'd love to hear what you are looking forward to hearing or learning more about. Lotus, if you have any ideas, then shoot them my way and we'll plan something.
And we can always, do some research on it and everything like that. So,
yeah, Rob the Princess says the Mage, the Thief, and the Warrior.
The constellations.
There's the constellations, and then there's the concept of like.
I could actually see that being kind of interesting because there's several tiers to that as you kind of go down the idea. Yeah,
there's the fundamental part of reality and the way that
then there's the constellation thing, and then it's how it relates to your birth signs, and it's got that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, we'll consider it. So thanks for that suggestion. Anybody else with suggestions, let us know. You can always tweet at us. You can join the Discord, send us some messages on there, or jump in the live stream to come on over twitch.tv/robotsradio. Shoot me some messages. Introduce yourself. Lotus, you got other stuff going on. I'm sure you've got Tales of Tamriel. And
actually, I was going to say our weird schedule continues. We're going to attempt a new day of live recording on Wednesdays now because the previous ones haven't been working out so great. So actually, we released an episode of Tales early today. So if you're interested in our more news / roundtable version of just Elder Scrolls stuff in general, more often than not because of the live service version of it, ESO is kind of the main topic. We just released an episode of that, and hopefully by next time I will have some more concrete details on upcoming Extra Life. So very excited to kind of nail down some of the stuff with that. I've been talking to some people behind the scenes for our big marathon because fall is here and that's usually the Extra Life time. So
nice. Well,
very excited to get that started.
Yeah, good luck with that. That sounds exciting. I've got all my stuff, all my different podcasts. Robotsradio.net for my shows, for all the different shows on the network. Tales of Tamriel's on there too. And
sure are.
Check it out. I'm sure you're going to find some other video game or lore shows about whatever. We got lots of stuff. Fill up your brain. That should be our new tag. Fill up your brain.
Fill up your brain with Lorecasts.
Robots Radio. Fill up your brain.
Robots Radio. Fill up your brain.
Or just come hang out with me during the live streams. Thanks for being here, everybody. We really do appreciate you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter at robots_radio or Lotus of Doom at Lotus of Doom. Also, you can join us on the Robots Radio Discord channel. You can easily just search Robots Radio Discord on Google or check the description underneath the podcast. Also, this podcast is recorded live every week on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Robots Radio channels on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So just search Robots Radio on any of those platforms. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you while we record the show, or before or after. Either way, just come hang out with us. And if you're looking for more information about my shows and the shows on the Robots Radio Network, go to robotsradio.net for all the information about all the shows on the network, including the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where I help both new and existing podcasters to grow their shows, build their audiences, and create the best podcasts they possibly can. All of that at robotsradio.net. We'll see you next time.